And just so you know, in the Q&A session, for privacy reasons, the recording, neither your voice or your face will be shown. So, just so you know, so that you're aware. And now I'm just going to go down the list and introduce our panelists. So up first we'll have Detective Pierre Falez. He's a school resource officer at Montclair High School. Next is Jerry Citro, who's a student assistance counselor at Renaissance Middle School. Then we have Hugh Witter, who's a counselor at Montclair High School. Then Jamie Doshi, a student assistance counselor at Montclair High School's 9th grade academy. And then we have Nadja Khwaja, substance abuse counselor at the Cove Counseling Center here in Montclair. Next, the handsome young man is Ben Selesnik, a former Montclair High student and currently a Northeastern University junior. And then at the end we have George Burrows, who's a social studies teacher at Montclair High School. So without any further ado, we'll let Detective Falez begin.
Good evening. I'm Detective Pierre Falez. I'm with the Montclair Police Department. I work in the Juvenile Aid Bureau, and I am also assigned to Montclair High School. I guess my topic is the early warning signs. I just want to let you guys know I am a parent of a high school senior here also, and one of the best things that we can do as parents is pay attention to our children. If you pay attention to what they're doing, changes in behavior, changes in friends, if you look at their eyes, if you smell their clothes. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but but if you start smelling alcohol, if you start smelling marijuana, if you look at their hands, if you just pay attention, you'll see, sometimes they'll burn their fingers. If you just pay attention to the little things, you will see if your child is starting to abuse some type of substance. You just have to pay attention. Don't confuse teenage hormones or just their mood swings. It's not always that, that's not always what it's going to be. Sometimes it's just them growing up and wanting to get away from you. So you just have to pay attention a little bit to that stuff. You can also, a lot of times with us, if you pay attention to their friends, for the most part, the majority of your kids' friends, sometimes they live around you. When they start changing friends, sometimes they're doing different things. So you definitely need to pay attention to that. One thing that we notice is partying. How many of you guys' kids party a lot? Well, over spring break, there was a lot of partying going on. Kids weren't going home one time. They stayed out really extra late, sometimes overnight. We can control that as parents. Check in on your kids, see where they are, see who they're with, and just have them check in with you. If they have curfews, if they normally get in on time and they're not on time, do a little bit of work and try and check up on them. One of the other things we're going to talk about today is the drug trends. A lot of times for events or something different, the kids feel like they need to warm up to get relaxed and they'll drink. With high school kids, you'll notice they don't know how to handle liquor. Most times they drink too much, but that's part of what they do. That's part of growing up. They don't understand that you can't drink that much. Now, what you can do, like I said, is just pay attention. They drink too much. They come to some school events. If they come to a school event drunk, the school will notify the police department. Now, I work in the high school as a detective for the police department, so I'm assigned here. So when something happens here, the school will notify me. If something happens outside of school, as part of our memorandum of agreement, we will notify the school, mostly to get the kids help. The kids when they start using substances, we don't want to see them fall by the wayside and become addicted to anything. So we will try and get them help. Now, there are certain things that we may not be able to just look over. So sometimes they may be charged, and as part of, if there's alcohol and we catch them with alcohol, or if we catch them with drugs in school, they will be charged, but we will also try and get them help. We will speak with the school student assistant counselors in assisting to get them help. Now, like I said, if they are charged, there will be consequences with the court, which we don't always we can't determine the outcome, but that's all part of what happens between that also. So, if they're charged out, if we find them with liquor outside the school, we don't always want to charge them, so sometimes we'll just let them go, we'll speak to the parents, we'll station house, just get them counseling. Some of the drug trends that are going on right now are synthetic marijuana, household drugs, Xanax, any of those pills that usually alter your state at home. You have to watch that because they also have Roxy, oxycodone. Just have to pay attention to what's in your house, count your pills, make sure that when they're at their friends' houses, they're not using them, because some of the kids like to share pills, Ritalin, and different things like that. I already touched on some of the legal consequences. We have a juvenile detention center in Newark, so for some of the things that do go on, they may end up going there. They may end up having to sometimes write letters, or just doing community service. So that's just some of the things that go on here. Like I said, a major part of what we're here to do is help. We don't want to see our kids go on to bigger habits. One of the things that we're seeing more in this area is heroin use. So you definitely need to pay attention, because usually when they try heroin, they're not just trying heroin, it becomes a really, really bad addiction. And just so you guys know, like, each police vehicle has Narcan, and when they start using, we've already had to use Narcan several times on people here in town. So the problem is here. We would like to address it. We'd like to confront it head on and assist people. That's at the end. So just write your question down. Pretty much that's my time. If you have any questions for me, you can. Yeah, you can do them at the end.
We'll do the questions at the end, then you can ask whatever you want.
Thank you. I have a tendency to be very talkative, so Alex is right up here, and she's going to give me, it's kind of like what my wife used to do when I used to do my basketball banquets. She kind of gave me it done. My name is Jerry Citro, and there couldn't be a more important topic. I had two kids that went through Montclair School District, both graduated from Montclair High School, and one is out of college now, living a dream in Hoboken, working in the city. And the other one is going to graduate on Mother's Day from college. So your children can be successful here, and can be very successful here. And there are some detriments. We're going to talk a lot about I'm going to talk about the reasons why kids use. I'm going to talk about some theories on addiction, and I'm going to talk about, in particular, the personality traits of children that tend to use alcohol and drugs. So Karen, if you could give me my first slide. The reasons why kids use. They are very, very common. You can find it in almost all the things that you look up. And and they are really, really true. I work with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders at middle school, and we talk about this as part of our health curriculum. And the kids come up with these without me even talking about it, without me even telling them. They come up with the reasons why. Now, obviously, these are researched, but experimentation, kids hear about it, they want to know what it's like, they want to know how it makes you feel, and if they have access, it becomes very easy to try. And they do have access. We have to be really honest with ourselves. They have access. A pleasure. I want to have fun. I want to be with my friends. So they'll engage. There are parties that they go to that it's very, very hard to refrain. It's very, very hard to not be a user. So they're going to be encouraged to fill the red cup up or to take a hit of a joint. Escape from boredom. Obviously, you guys know this, and the way I raised my children is I kept them as busy as I could keep them. I taught my kids play 3 sports. They both became Division I athletes because they loved playing sports, but they were really, really busy. And I started that at a very young age. And if a kid doesn't like sports, I want to tell you to find what they love, to find what makes them excited. Help them find them. Enroll them in enough activities that they find what's important to them. And then keep them engaged in those activities. Find their passion. Help them find their passion by enrolling them in all different things. And it doesn't have to be sports. It could be art, could be dance, could be theater. There are all different types of activities they can do. Find their passion. Make sure they're busy. Don't let them get bored. Peer influence, and I tell the kids this all the time. I said, how many times has your parent said, I'm worried about who you're hanging out with? I said, because parents are smart. They understand that birds of a feather flock together. You can't tell me a kid is more at risk if 4 of his friends are out at lunchtime smoking a joint every day. You can't tell me that child is not at more risk. The day's going to come when they are weaker, or they're not having a good day, or their girlfriend or boyfriend broke off with them, and they want that escape. If they're with groups of kids who use, their chances of using will become greater. Escape problems, a lot of kids self-medicate. A lot of kids self-medicate to get out of their own issues. And we'll talk about that a little later on when I talk about the theories of addiction. They want to be grown. They want to be grown. Mommy and Daddy do it. Mommy and Daddy have a drink. And I try to teach our kids about brain development. There's a really clear statistic, and I want you to take this in. At 13 years old, a kid who starts using alcohol and drugs is at a 40% chance of becoming addicted. Once they become 18, that goes down to 10%. That's the rate of addiction of adults, 10%. But the rate of addiction of an undeveloped brain is 40%. That's a huge difference. And that's what we try to do as substance awareness coordinators. Prolong experimentation, prolong abstinence for as long as we can. Rebelliousness, there's a fine line of being overburdening as a parent. There's a fine line, and we have to be cautious. Obviously, relief from mental illnesses, I'll talk about that more, kids self-medicating. And we cannot deny that there are role models, the musicians, sports players engage in use. And they're our kids' role models. Next slide, Karen. These are the theories of addiction. I'll talk about personality theories at the end because I have another. The reinforcement theory is When I take this drug, does it make me feel the way I want it to feel? And in most cases, it does. If a kid wants out of how he feels for the first time when he drinks, and you'll hear Ben's story later, it will make them feel good. All of a sudden, the inhibitions are gone. All of a sudden, they're this courageous kid that they always want to be. They're free from fear. The gateway theory. The gateway theory of drug addiction is if we experiment with the milder drugs, marijuana, alcohol, and nicotine, the wording is the chances of that person becoming addicted, using heavier drugs, become greater. Not all people who smoke marijuana or drink will become addicted, but their chances become greater. Opens up the gates. This isn't working anymore. I need something stronger. And they continue to use. Happens to many kids. I don't know one heroin addict, and I know thousands, that started out shooting heroin. Not one. But I know many of them that start out with marijuana and alcohol and become a heroin addict. Many of them. Biological theories. We all know there's a gene that's been linked to addiction, and some of your kids are predisposed genetically. So if there is an addict or an alcoholic in the family, and sometimes it skips generations, not only mom and dad, aunt and uncle, grandma, grandpa, they are at a 50% greater risk of becoming addicted. Ooh. That went fast. Metabolic imbalances is linked to mental illnesses. When kids don't have a flow of serotonin and dopamine, neurotransmitters, they are at greater risk of enjoying some of the drugs that they use because they will fulfill that uptake. They will give them mass doses. Heroin and cocaine give mass doses of dopamine. That's what makes the kids go like this. Social theories. The social theories are think with birds of a feather flock together. Post-traumatic stress disorder. We know that kids that are abused are very, very likely to use. We know that kids who have trauma in their life are more likely to use. That's the post-traumatic stress disorder theory. If a kid has a major stressor in their life, it's hard to live with that, and they learn to escape. So let's talk more about the personality theories. Next slide, Karen. These are the characteristics that probably could define every adolescent that you look at. But I don't want you to look at them in totality. I want you to look at them individually and see if it's hyper in my kid. Is my kid a perfectionist? It's really, really difficult to be a perfectionist. Because we all know, as adults, you're going to fail sometime. Perfect is not possible. We're human beings. Real important, what I wanted to talk about earlier is stress. We have to manage our kids' schedules because high school can be very stressful if we put them in courses that they are not ready for. And we all want our kids to strive, and we all want them to be in the highest level courses, but we put our kids in danger of stress. Risk-taking behavior, low regard. There isn't a person I've ever, and I've heard again, thousands and thousands of qualifiers qualify about their addiction, typically speak about low self-esteem, about not feeling like they fit in, about not feeling good enough, not feeling pretty enough, not feeling handsome enough, not feeling skinny enough, not feeling fat enough, not feeling whatever, just not feeling like they're part of. And those are real strong indicators. Kids want to be happy. They don't want to feel like that all the time. Now, I could go on. I teach a course called Perspectives on Drugs at Montclair State University. And it takes me a whole semester to teach about this topic. We're going to give you an hour little vignette about this addiction process and about drug use. We have to be, Pierre is so right, you have to be in conversations with your kids all the time. How they feeling? What are they thinking about? What are their worries? What are their stresses? Are you doing okay? Please, please, don't expect your kid, unless they're very brilliant, to be a straight A student. That is sometimes for some kids, that is a hurdle that they cannot achieve. Yet, we as parents push them. I want straight A's. We have to, very simple, do your best every day. Do your very best every day. And I'll let the cards fall where they fall. Thank you very much. Well, that's my family.
You sure you just Photoshop yourself?
That's our pretty family at the farm.
So when I told Jerry that I have very little to say, he kept his word and said, I'll use your time, Hugh. But I'm privileged to be in this capacity where I can share in terms of, and most of what I've gathered, apart from what I've learned in school and in college, a lot of it is through experience. And after working for approximately 26 years with teens, I've learned a lot over this time. I've learned a lot in terms of working with this community and working with our high school and middle school students. My topic is, and for such a slide that I choose to start with because I'm looking at effects, short-term and long-term effects of alcohol and other drug uses. And the reason I choose to start with a slide like that is because it's really saying that things go wrong. Not just looking at a car crash, it's not just, some people think that it's as a result of maybe driving under the influence or distracted driving. But from a broader concept, when our kids start to use different substances, things go wrong. Many times things happen that they really didn't expect, never anticipated. And these are, in a sense, accidents from their perspective. And it ranges. Detective Felice touched on some aspect of it. Jerry did a great job in mentioning some. And we would have had quite a few overlaps by the time you hear from all the panelists. But I will be quite a little bit more specific. Effects of substance use, from alcohol down to all the other drugs, many of which you know, Detective Felice spoke of some of them. A lot of the effects can be based on individual, different factors. Different things will cause different effects when we look at these things. It could be based on gender. Effects in terms of age can affect in terms of how individuals respond to certain things. It could be genetic makeup. All of these come together. Physiological factors will determine how a particular drug affect us, affect our children. And so because of that, there is no one thing that we would look at and say, this is what actually will happen if one uses. Now based on diagnostic manual, they range in terms of substance use disorders from mild, moderate, and severe use. And it shows, I kind of like in terms of how it is put, because it shows that, use can range from one part of the spectrum to the other. But the effects vary. You can change card. I choose that other slide to say, well, you know what, in terms of affects, it reaches a point where, speaking of our kids, at some point after excessive use, they realize that, wow, what's happening? And then they would maybe lose control. But move to the next two slides, Karen, please. We have I bulleted some short-term effects. Some of these worked into maybe long-term effects also. And one, financially, it affects not just the child but the family. Because at some point, for example, through our experiences, when we identify that a child is using certain substances, then it takes a toll on the family, where now we have to spend money to get them the support they need in education, other support that would not just be found normally. Fortunately for us, we have substance abuse coordinators in most of our schools in our district. We're fortunate to have that, and hopefully we don't lose that. But it costs the family. It costs the family money when we start to use. One, in terms of medical bills, providing some psychiatric support, psychological support, professional help is needed at some point in time. Relationship changes. Now, I've seen students walk into my office month after month, year after year, and we see that things change in their lives. For one, we have some who they find new friends. For them, they consider it good or bad. We have some who they lose friends. They lose contact with their peers, and some, they lose that close-knit, in some cases, with their families. They lose good-knit relationship with support structures that they have. And at some point, it comes to a point where, out of maybe denial, guilt, they would tend to want to avoid certain groups, certain families, certain support system, when they may become, feeling maybe to blame themselves or wanting to avoid reality of it. In terms of judgment, there are impairments. Now, before I lose a thought, we would have known that, and Jerry spoke a little about that, where substances change teen brains. They're at a delicate stage where, trimming are going on. It's like a young tree, losing parts, growing new ones, and so the brain is susceptible to a lot. At the teen years, you find that it absorbs other things easier than normal, and many times kids don't have time to think about that, especially after being exposed through social means to these different substances, through parties. This is one of the ways, more frequent ways, where kids socialize, where they come together as a group. And using drugs is one way that they really bond in groups and find some sense of belonging. And when they get exposed to different chemicals, these chemicals change brain structure permanently. And of course, it increases the chances of addiction in later years. So my time is running out. So on top of that, we have some substances that serve as stimulants, some substances that serve as depressant. They don't know either. And so, for example, some people who maybe already in a depressed state may tend to, if they choose to use marijuana, for example, which is a depressant, you can just imagine in terms of how it can make things worse. They don't think about that. And for the other substances, if it's a case in which they're already hyper and certain things are happening, then if they're using a drug which is a stimulant, we can just imagine what can happen from that. Many drugs leads to fatality. That's the reality of it. Fatality after impairment, for example. Many families have, unfortunately lost loved ones as a result of that. Overdoses. And it has happened in school, where we do have kids who overdose. It depends on the substance. We can talk about paranoia, where kids will literally start to think about things that really aren't realistic. Delusion set in for some cases. And it ranges, hallucination. Kids lose control. You can change Karen, so I'm wrapping up. One point to make essentially is that I have seen, and the best thing is being able to speak from experience, where I've seen kids who walk into my office after using, and they would say, Mr. Willard, no, I see, things are different. I really can't remember things as I used to. I don't think the way I used to. I've seen kids walk into my office and they would say, even if they're failing, kids who are actually on the verge of maybe not graduating from high school, are at risk of repeating a grade, thinking that everything will be okay. Literally, when it's presented in front of them, that listen, you're failing. You're going to repeat 9th, 10th, or 11th or senior year. They're like, no, I can do it. When realistically, it's not possible. Different stages of psychosis. Reality becomes warped for them. We will hear more, and you get a chance to ask your question. But there are so many different ways in which we are affected by substance use. Our kids are affected by substance use. And hopefully our awareness will get us to a point where we can protect our young minds as we move along. Thank you.
My name is Jamie Doshi. I'm the Student Assistance Counselor at Montclair High School. I work mainly in the 9th grade building. So I'm the SAC, as they call us, for the 9th graders. I'm here to talk to you about drug abuse prevention. I want to get started, but can you go to the first slide? Thanks. By going over a few things that Jerry already touched on is understanding why teens might be drawn to drug use. You know, a lot of these he's already gone over, but basically it kind of boils down to using it as a coping mechanism. If they're having issues with depression, anxiety, any type of overwhelming feeling, they want to escape, they too might turn to drugs or alcohol. Trying to fit in, feeling that, hey, everybody's doing it, I might as well try it too. Boredom, and this what always surprises me, is that they're bored, nothing else going on, might as well try it, and then experimenting. Okay. What you want to do is to start by looking and addressing the underlying issues. Okay? And it comes down to addressing protective factors, which are positive influences in the kid's life, in your student's life, strong parent relationship, being successful in school, having a connection to pro-social institutions, sports, extracurricular activities, connections to social organizations, getting involved is a big deal. And then decreasing risk factors. Risk factors are the negative things that could be impacting and turning a child towards experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Having difficulty with their temperament, issues at home, having failing in school, and going back to the poor coping mechanisms. Negative peer relationships, too, is another one. Communication and awareness is key, which is, you know, what a lot of the panelists have already kind of gone over. Okay, next one. Great. How can parents prevent drug abuse? So, a lot of the strategies that I'm about to review are just good communication strategies in general when talking with your children. They work when talking about substance abuse, but they can work with a lot of things. Okay. Has anybody seen that commercial on TV where it's the old commercial from like the 80s, where it's the egg, they throw it in the frying pan and this is your brain on drugs. They do it now, it's like drugfree.org or what is it, a Partnership for Drug-Free America. They're doing the same thing, I don't know if you've seen it on TV, where it starts out with the egg and the frying pan and kind of the general 80s just say no, but then it pans to a child and they're like, any questions? And the kid is like, yeah, I have questions. And then they go on to say, are prescription drugs more dangerous? What makes marijuana dangerous? Is it legal? And it just, I think it's a great kind of commercial to communicate to parents, the viewer, that it's not that simple as just say no. In a perfect world, it would be. I would love it. Just say no? Okay, I'm great. That would be awesome. but it's not. It's talking about it. It's communicating with your child what you are expecting from them, what you want for them, okay? And having a dialogue and being open towards answering those questions. So, establish good communication with your children, which is, again, easier said than done. I have children, and I'm a counselor, and it's not always easy for me to establish good communication with them. Granted, they're not in high school, but still. Talk to them every day. It's great. It'd be awesome if that was easy, but it's not. You're busy, they're busy. It really takes effort to sit down and kind of ask them how their day was. What was the best part of the day? You know, was there anything within the day that they wish they'd done better or that they could have changed? Those type of questions. Ask open-ended question. How many times have you said to your child, did you have a good day? And they shut you down with a yes or a no and don't give you any more information. Right? Everybody's had that happen. And those are closed questions. Phrasing something like that is a way for them to easily answer with a yes or no, and it leaves no room for any expansion of dialogue. You want to work on phrasing your question as open-ended. What was the best part of your day? How was your day today? Now that one's tricky too, because that could just be like, fine, which is kind of shuts down the conversation. But you want to kind of elaborate on it. Oh, we talked about your math test yesterday. How did that go? Fine. Continuing with the conversation. Get involved in their lives, which you're here, so clearly you are. But as Officer Foley says, it's about just being aware and watching things. Let's see. Commit to spending time together. Make a date. That would be a recommendation. They're busy. You're busy. Come together. Family time. Make a date. Go out. Go to the movies. Go to dinner. Something. Make clear rules and enforce them. Now is the time to tell them what your expectations are in terms of friendships, curfew, drugs, and alcohol. Okay? Tell them what your expectations are, what the consequences are, and follow up should they break the rules. Model the behavior you want to see in your child. They are watching you. Even when you think they're not watching you, they're watching you. If you come home and you had a rough day, maybe you have a glass of wine, they're watching you. Okay? They're noting every time you have a drink, how you deal with stress, how you communicate, how you address other people. They're watching and they're absorbing. Let's see. Help your kids make wise choices about their peer groups. Again, another one, easier said than done. It's about knowing their friends and who they're hanging out with, knowing their friends' parents, where they're going, who's going to be there. And if you feel that somebody's not the best influence, have a conversation with them about it. Not in anger, not when something's happened, before. Something simple as, you know, I noticed that you've been hanging out with so-and-so more. They're a new friend. Are they a good friend? I noticed you pulled away from this group of friends. Is there a reason why? You seem to be so close. Conversations like that. And then talk to your kids about drugs. It is never too early to communicate with children about drugs. Grammar school, absolutely. Preschool, if you can. Something as simple as medicine. We only take medicine when it's prescribed by a doctor. Little conversations like that. Build it up in elementary school. Absolutely should be having those conversations in middle school and high school. The dialogue should never stop. Next. School and community involvement. School involvement. The school provides education about, and provides students information on drugs and alcohol abuse. It is done through our health curriculum. Intervention. The Student Assistance Program was designed to promote healthy lifestyle choices. around drugs and alcohol, around mental health, around social and emotional issues. Encourage involvement in extracurricular activities. I believe this is important. Whenever I first meet a student, for whatever reason, we go over how they transition to the high school, how is it from middle school, do they have any concerns, how are they doing academically, and then I always end with extracurricular activities. Tell them they need to be involved in something. Whether it's a club, a job, if they're old enough, sports, the musical, something. They should not be coming home after school or just going off to some random place. They should have something else that they're trying out and developing an interest in. And then community involvement. Saturday, last Saturday, so it's past, Essex County did a prescription drug drop box all over the county. Montclair, I believe, has its own that's permanently there. And this is a great thing. Basically, what you can do is the prescription drugs that you're prescribed a drug, you use it as long as you need it. If you have extra, you gather all the drugs, take off your labels, you can drop them in the box, and they get destroyed. Prescription drug abuse is on the rise. It's always a good idea to kind of limit the drugs in your house if possible. If you need them, of course, but you shouldn't have extra ones hanging around. Adapt is Essex County, through Essex County Prevention Coalition. They're a great website. They do a lot of programs in the community. They have pamphlets back there that you should check them out. They have a great website that provides a lot of information. And then Livingston Parent Self-Help Group. There's pamphlets also back there for them. They provide a very good service where they have, I think it's like weekly or bi-weekly parent support meetings, and they connect parents with resources. Okay? That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Nadia Paja and I'm the Adolescent Program Coordinator at Cope Center. Cope Center is an outpatient substance abuse facility here in Montclair. We have an adolescent and adult program, so primarily today obviously I'm going to be talking about the adolescents. Before I get talking about some of the treatment options, I just wanted to thank all of you for being here, because I think some of the hardest parts of my job is getting parents involved, and that's kind of a surprise I think to some of you. I think substance use, is something that sometimes parents are surprised by, sometimes they're already aware of. And usually when your kids are getting caught in school, it's usually not their first time doing it. So I think that's just like a little heads up there, right? It's kind of a risky place to do it for the first time. But that being said, kids are really curious. They want to know what's out there, they want to have fun, and they want to fit in. I think that being aware of that's very important. Some of the major drugs that we usually see is alcohol and marijuana. However, I have been noticing there's an increase in prescription pills like Xanax. I think as adults, people hear, oh, just pop a Xanax, you'll calm down or you'll be relaxed. But for kids, it's actually very dangerous, and in adults too, because it's highly addictive and it's only meant for short-term use. And the same thing with marijuana. Marijuana is becoming legal, but kids are using it different ways. The THC high content is a lot higher than, back in the day, in the 70s or 80s, or even further than that. It's a lot more potent. THC is an active ingredient in marijuana, for those of you who don't know that. And they're also doing it different ways. There's these things called dabs. It's like wax. They're using vaporizers. They're using bongs. There's so many different ways to consume marijuana that it's scary, and so it's important to be aware of that. Some other things with alcohol as well. I think, teens, with alcohol being legal, and it's something that's, publicized everywhere, that, it's something socially acceptable. But for teenagers, it's a really scary thing. So if your kid is drinking to access and blacking out or doesn't remember, they can make very poor choices. So I think that's the thing that you want to be aware of, how to be responsible and having those open discussions. So as far as treatment goes, there's a lot of options. It doesn't have to be just rehab. I think, people think, oh, addicts, they go to rehab. But most substance abuse treatment is treated at an outpatient setting. So at Cope Center, we have an outpatient intensive outpatient program, and that just varies on the level of care. Usually when, if you have concerns or anything about substance use, it's never too early or too late, I believe, to get your kid help or just to keep an eye on it. Usually how the process works is they'll have a substance abuse evaluation, and that kind of monitors to see, kind of assesses to see where they're at, their history of use. Usually that time, parents' information. I get information from parents, to hear any background information because it's so valuable. You share things that your kids might not, and then your kids share things that you might not know. So it's kind of good to get a feel from, everybody what's going on. And then at that point, they usually get drug tested as well. And then with collaboration with the schools, with their different referrals, such as legal system, DCP&P, a variety of sources, then we kind of collaborate and see what the kid best needs. So usually, there's also, with the outpatient, the kids' treatment can vary from 1 to 3 groups a week, at least at our facility, and most facilities have a range of that as well. But usually it's group setting as well as individual counseling, and it offers different things. There's a big part of psychoeducation about refusal skills, about coping with triggers, understanding legal ramifications, coping with peer pressure, learning how to make better decisions. And then at an outpatient setting, you're kind of assessing where the kid's at. Not everybody that gets treatment is an addict. Some kids are just abusing substances. Some of them will just try it a couple times, but others won't, and they'll progress to other things. So when substance use kind of becomes unmanageable and they're continuing to use despite the negative consequences, despite failing school, despite their parents being against it, despite having legal ramifications and not being aware of anything, kids will take those risks because their brains are developing. And to be honest, they think that they can get away with anything. And that's why the parents' role in enforcing consequences is so important, especially at an early age. Because if your kid, most people think, oh, my kid's a good kid, so I don't really need to give them any, consequences. But then when this problem behavior starts in high school, and you start enforcing the consequences then, you have no leverage because you never did it before, so why would they start listening to that now, So it's so important with that. But if their substance use continues, there are residential programs, and those are obviously where kids stay and they'll get the treatment there in a controlled environment. And average residential programs for adolescents range from 4 to 6 months, but they can be shorter depending on different insurances and things like that. But there's definitely options out there, and I think it's so important just to realize that there's help, and you're not alone in this at all. And, when school sends, if your kid's smoking in school and the school counselors get involved and want your kids to get an assessment, they're not working against you, they're working with you because they want your kid to get the best help they can. And so it's just so important to be aware of that. And it's a community effort, right? It takes a village, and that is so, I think, important, especially with addiction, because nobody has to go through it alone, and it affects everybody. Thank you very much.
Hey everybody, my name is Ben Selesnik. I am a former Montclair High School student, not a Montclair High graduate, but a student, Mount Hebron graduate, if that counts for something. So I guess I come here as the case study, as the one who tried marijuana and alcohol as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, and got addicted and failed out of high school for a little bit before going to treatment. So I have about 10 minutes to tell my story, I think. 15. So I grew up in Montclair. Alex is my mother. She's a great influence on me. But even with that, I think it's important to note that even with a strong structural system, sometimes kids will slip into stuff anyway, I grew up in a nice home, loving parents, 2 brothers. I'm the middle of 3. Went to Watchung, then I went to Mount Hebron, as I said. And it's funny listening to what everybody's been saying because it feels like they're describing me throughout this whole process. They're describing me at least what I was when I was younger. Because I had low self-esteem, I struggled with a lot of anxiety and depression from a young age, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I had friends, I had a good close group of friends, but even still I felt like I didn't fit in. I was bored a lot of the time. Even when I was doing things, I didn't feel fully engaged with what I was doing. And so when I was 13 and a friend of mine asked me to drink, I said sure. And it was pretty inconsequential. We just took something out of his parents' liquor cabinet. And I remember getting drunk and blacking out and enjoying it, but not being so wrapped up in it that I had to do it again the next day, even though I didn't really like it. It seemed still like the bad thing to do. Like it was wrong still, even though I drank, don't drink. But when I smoked weed for the first time, I was 14, and I was with a friend. We were playing music together. I played trumpet in the school band at Mount Hebron. He played trumpet at Glenfield, and we wanted to play together. And he asked me if I wanted to smoke weed, and even though I'd taken DARE and all those other courses that told me not to, and I was told repeatedly not to during health class and all that, in that moment, I still said, sure, yeah, I'll go ahead and do it. You know, not really thinking about what does this mean, what does this mean about how I feel about myself, what's this going to do, all that was kind of not present in that moment. So I got high, and I loved it. Like Jerry described it, like released my anxiety. I wasn't thinking about what other people thought about me. It did for me what I always wanted the world to do for me. I always wanted to feel comfortable around other people, and I finally did. And I wanted to feel free. And in like that 2-hour period where I was high, I felt free. And like that moment forward, maybe not in that moment, but in like the following weeks as I started to do it more, I kind of made like a decision to myself that this is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm just going to stay high and drunk as much as I can because that seems to work. So that's more or less what I did from the get-go. At first, I didn't have money to buy or pay for weed. I had friends who did, which was nice, and I also didn't have any connections at first. But as time went on, those two things sort of removed themselves. I quickly started selling weed as I found somebody who could give me, decent deals for it, and so that supplied most of my habit. And I also stole from my parents a boatload as much as I could at any moment I could. And that started about my freshman year of high school. So I was about 15. Beforehand, in middle school, I had all A's. I didn't really have a lot of problems with school. I liked math a lot. I liked reading. And I get to freshman year at Montclair High, and I'm meeting so many new people, and the only way I know how to relate to these new people is through getting high or getting drunk. That was the only social skill I felt like I had. When I was high, I could be personable. When I was drunk, I could be personable. I could meet so many more people through that, like just different avenues of connections through getting high. And I loved it for about the first year of doing it. Through freshman year, I made, again, a lot of new friends. I shed all my old friends more or less immediately because they weren't getting high or getting drunk. Again, that's another thing where I heard you guys talk about. I was like, oh yeah, that was me, like to a T. My grades dropped a little bit, maybe to like B's and C's from A's in middle school, but I didn't really mind. I didn't care a whole lot because it wasn't my focus anymore. My focus was more on getting high, making friends, talking to girls, doing all that high school stuff. And again, that worked for about a year. I was playing music with friends still, and I was still having a good time, but more or less between my freshman year and sophomore year that summer was when I began to recognize it as like a daily habit. Because I would skip class to get high during the week beforehand, but it was a nice occasion when I did that. And then by the time that summer, it was a daily thing, and it wasn't an occasion. It was, I need to do this today or else something bad will happen. I don't know what, I'll feel bad about myself if I don't. And so I did that for a few months. I worked a summer job. At this time I was getting a lot of friction with my parents, getting a lot of trouble. But although it hurt me to see what they were going through, it just didn't seem important enough. It didn't really feel, because I was already wrapped up in my addiction at that point. So if they were to feel pain for it, if my brothers were to feel pain for watching me go through what I was going through, if I lost friendships because I stole money from people, which happened all the time, so be it. It's just a consequence, and I didn't really mind. I just picked that up as, that's what happens. So I get back to school sophomore year, and within about 4 or 5 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 2 months, In Montclair High, you can get 20 absences per class before you lose credit. I hit about 19 like right away, like the first few weeks. I just cut class as much as I could, I just, I hung out with my friends all day. And at this point, my social circles had gone from like, my original friends in middle school, then it really expanded, and then by sophomore year, it got really small again. It was just the same 3 kids who I got high with every day, and that's really all that was left. I wasn't meeting new people anymore. I wasn't making new friendships. I wasn't interested in any of that stuff anymore. I was very interested on just, keep the focus, stay high. That's the focus, stay high. So I fell into, I remember like that October, really feeling like I was falling into a deep depression. That lasted for about 8 months. Well, it lasted a little bit longer than that, but it was about 8 months. Eventually my parents tried to get me to go to a program, I think in December or January of my sophomore year, and I wouldn't go. I was not ready to give up drinking or drugging yet. And around January, I reached the point where I could no longer attend classes. I dropped out. I missed too many. I was too depressed, and for about 4 months, I just sat in my parents' attic or basement, getting high and drunk by myself more or less every day. And the only times I'd leave the house were to buy weed, to sell weed, or to buy alcohol, and sell alcohol occasionally, but not that much. So that was 4 really depressing months where my life was very small. And I didn't really see much hope for the future. And I was going to therapy like 3 or 4 times a week, and it wasn't doing a thing because yes, like therapy helps, my issue was not going to be solved in therapy. It was going to be solved in a treatment program. And it took a while to come to that conclusion. I got sober on May 28, 2011, so almost 6 years ago. And it just really, I had to reach a point of enough pain where I was willing to say yes to treatment because it had been pushed in front of me like, you need help, by my therapist and by my parents and even by friends. I get text messages saying like, you need to do something because like clearly you're going nowhere. And it was only, again, like when I reached enough pain, like when suicide became a very clear option, like I wrote out letters to both my parents and my brothers and to myself and all my old friends because I was planning on committing suicide. But luckily that never happened. I got intervened on by a kid who I knew, who I used to buy weed from when I was younger, ironically. He had gotten sober and he'd gone to treatment, and he told me that if I wanted help, there was a place where I could go to get help. And I didn't know it was rehab at the time, and if he told me it was rehab, I would have said no, because I still viewed drinking and drugs as the solution. Luckily, he didn't describe it as rehab. Maybe he did, but I don't remember him doing it that way. I just remember him saying, like, there's a place where you can get help. He talked to me like an equal, which was really rare. It felt really rare. Now that I think about it, he said like, do you ever feel like this? Do you ever feel like you're caught in a spot where you don't know what to do? Do you feel like in your life that like, are you happy with your life right now? And obviously the answer was no. Do you feel like you can go a day without drinking or without getting high? And I said no, even though I didn't put much weight on that question. So things like that, and I agreed to get help. And I went to treatment. It was a 30-day program out in Pennsylvania. I found out it was rehab. I was very upset at first, and then I kind of calmed down because I realized I didn't have much of a choice because all I could do was run away, and if you run away, the cops pick you up and bring you back. So that wasn't much of an option. And I just got in line. I started to listen to what people were saying and what people were saying about alcoholism and drug addiction and what it meant to be an addict or an alcoholic. And right off the bat, I started to recognize, oh my God, that's me. That's exactly what I do. That's how I think. That's how I feel. That's how I react to the world. And it was really reassuring, as scary as that sounds, to know that like you're a drug addict and it's like it's a disease. It's a terminal disease for many people. So even still, it was nice to know that there was a solution and that there was something I could do about my problem. And that was 6 years ago. Since then, I had to repeat that sophomore year of high school. I didn't go to Montclair High. I got shipped off to a boarding school upstate. And I stayed there for 3 years and got my degree there. And since then, I spent 2 years at a university in Connecticut, and I recently transferred to Northeastern University in Boston, where I study English and creative writing. Hopefully gonna apply to a couple master's programs in the fall. And there's so much I can say about recovery and sobriety. There's a lot to be said. Yeah. Don't worry. Okay. I don't know. Recovery. The phrase that I hear a lot is that recovery gave me like a second chance at life. You know. But having started doing drugs so young and never really getting any coping skills before then, or never really knowing what to do with myself, I felt like I've grown up in recovery and I've learned how to live through recovery. And I think with that, that's probably a good segue to what you're going to talk about, George. So I'm going to hand it off to George now. Thanks.
Thank you for that very moving story, Ben. My name is George Burrows. I'm a teacher here at Montclair High School. Also a parent of 2 high school children here at Montclair High School. But most importantly, I am a proud graduate of Montclair High School, class of '78. I'd like to say they saved the best for last, but you saw the panel here, and it's a really, just a privilege and an honor to be able to be here to speak to you. And I want to thank Alex for allowing me an opportunity. And I want to thank you guys for coming out and listening to all this very good information. I'm here to talk specifically about a program which has it's been developed out of the Montclair YMCA. A couple of very important things that I forgot to put on the PowerPoint, that it's through the Montclair YMCA with their support and funding, as well as the Partners for Health and the National Youth Recovery Foundation. And the program is called Aspire. There's some flyers in the back. I'm going to ask Karen to start it. It's achieving sobriety and I came up with this, and I'm drawing a blank here, so by promoting an insightful recovery experience. So there you go. Okay. And it really taps into what Ben was talking about. The idea is, in the world of recovery, they say you stop growing, definitely emotionally, when you start drinking and drugging. And this program has been established mostly geared toward young adults, 18 to 30. And I know this is a high school audience, but some of you may have seniors who could benefit from this program, or you know people. We're starting a cohort in a month from today, June 2nd. So if you know anyone, we still have some spots open, and it's really a good opportunity. So if you can continue to the next slide. The purpose is to help young adults, between that age group with 3 months sobriety. That's one of the things that we want people who are coming in, because it's not a treatment program. And the idea is that they maintain long-term sobriety, because we hear a lot of people come in, get sober, they go through rehab, they go through, maybe an outpatient program for a year, and then they kind of, lose sight. So this is really geared toward helping people with long-term sobriety develop a sense of community. As Jerry and other people and Jamie were talking about, who's your peer group? And we want the peer group to be people who are in recovery and looking forward to having a productive, healthy, sober life. Okay, so the idea is that you have a cohort of 20 young adults. All right, our goal is to have 3 cohorts a year, and to develop and attain and employ life skills. And again, you heard Ben talk about that he didn't have the coping mechanisms or the skills that people who don't go down that path of addiction have. So that's one of the important things that we focus on. And to set specific goals and to achieve them. That's really what it's all about. Not just to say, oh, I want to do this, but how do you do it? And our job and our goal is to help to provide the tools in order to do that. That'll be useful, Ben. Okay. All right. A couple of things that Aspire is not. It's not a treatment program. Nadia talked to you about COPE and its program, and I strongly encourage people that, and Ben, in spite of himself, ended up at a rehab or a treatment program, but it's not that. It's not affiliated with any 12-step program or any other recovery program. And it's not anonymous. One of the things that we've talked about, and this is kind of coming up in our focus groups and our planning sessions, is that it's important that we take addiction and the disease of addiction and recovery out of the shadows. And that, because it's really, I would say most people can point to a family member or close friend who suffers from the disease of addiction, and people who have lost lives as a result of it, friends and family members. So the idea is that we take it out of the shadows and give people help. Okay, and it's not about addiction, but it's about recovery, and that's really our main focus. We don't care what you did, how often you did it, how long you did it, how bad it was, or whatever. We really want you to focus on your recovery. We welcome all people with all types of addictions to drugs or alcohol. It doesn't matter what your drug of choice was. Okay? And this is just, I'm going to give you briefly the format of the program. It's a 12-week intensive program, all through based out of the Montclair YMCA. And it's 1 weekend a month of experiential learning where you develop coping mechanisms, decision-making skills, problem-solving skills. Focus on the good things that you have, the good qualities, and minimize the negative qualities as well. Okay? Explore the barriers to recovery. What are some of the things that people face? And one of the things about the program is that we try to have people who are in long-term recovery themselves to be very much part of the program, because we've gone through the things that we're trying to help these young adults deal with. All right, and then weekly evening sessions where we're going to bring in resource people, and those resource people will have specific skill sets. So one of the things we've learned is that, like Ben was talking about, he almost didn't graduate high school. We have some people who didn't graduate high school. So how do you go about getting your GED? How do you apply to college? How do you apply? So we're going to have people come in and help to develop those skills. All right, and they're people from the community. And as I said, some people have legal issues, so we have lawyers who are on board to help out. Health and fitness is important, because when you're drinking and drugging, you're not really paying much attention to your health. So we have people to come in and deal with a wide range of topics and issues. And then after the 12-week program, there's a 9-month maintenance program. It's just once a month. And again, it's really to continue that cohort and to actually help hopefully achieve those skills and those goals. All right? So the idea is to develop a sense of community, monitor progress. Again, chart their progress and help them to achieve their goals, see how well they're doing. And create and implement a legacy project. And what that is one of the things we found in the recovery community is the idea of service. That's very important to give back to those that helped us achieve sobriety and maintain sobriety over a period of time. And the giving of service is very important, so we want to implement that into the Aspire program. So the idea is that each cohort will develop a legacy project, which is something that will give back to the community, to the recovery community, that will have some long-term effects and impact. And I'm a teacher, so I know my time limit. The bell rings, I got to get out of here. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about the program. And I'll turn it back over to Alex. Thank you.
So thank you to all our panelists. That was fabulous information, very useful and practical. So we're going to open up to questions now. I just want to point out one thing on your agenda. At the bottom, there's contact information for a lot of people on the panel. So if you want to email them, their emails are there. And then there's also the information about how this can be viewed online by next week. There's like the link to it. So just wanted to point that out. And now feel free to ask questions. You can direct it at a particular person, or they can decide, who is best qualified to answer the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I can't speak to what goes on in the main building, but in the 9th grade, the health teacher, Ms. Krimmel, goes over drugs, concerns. I don't know how you would access that. Do you have, Jerry teaches, yeah.
The whole health curriculum is located at central office with the rest of the curriculum. And there's a mandatory K-12 health curriculum. And you can view all of the standards K-12. And obviously, as the kids grow, they differ. But the whole curriculum is at central office in the Office of Instructional Curriculum.
But I'm also sure that if you contacted the health teacher, just send an email, I can give you that contact information if you need it, they can give you an idea, I'm sure, of what topics they cover.
And I can tell you what we cover in middle school. If you'd like to stay afterwards, I can give you all our topics. We did that letter 2 years ago. Me and Betty Strauss, the head nurse, put a letter together and sent it out to all the families. It's probably time to do that again. And it's really, really a problem. Opiate addiction and opiate deaths are the number one killer. Opiate deaths are the number one killers for kids 18 to 24. Because once they can't afford the opiates, then they start with heroin because it's much cheaper. And we all know that heroin's now being cut with a drug called fentanyl. And fentanyl is 50 times more powerful than heroin. And kids are dying every day in the state of New Jersey. And Governor Christie has done something good. He's really trying to promote treatment for kids in, for kids in New Jersey. So he's out there trying to get kids into treatment. And it's really a need. The epidemic of opium is worse than any drug epidemic we've seen, and that includes the 60s and 70s. The National Council of Alcohol and Alcohol Addiction.
In Montclair, I'd like to know. Is that something the cops would share? Because
That's confidential information, and I doubt you'll ever get that information strictly from Montclair. But there's a website called Monitoring the Future, which will give you the national trends. It's monitoringthefuture.org. And they give you all the national trends of every drug and whether they've increased in use or decreased in use. Monitoring the Future. It's the greatest survey that they do. They survey 80,000 students, 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade. And they'll give you all the statistics. And it's a sobering view.
I just wanted to say one thing to your point about not that many people being here, and I agree with you. And we did this panel about 5 years ago, similar panel. We had like 150 people, and we did it last year. We had maybe 80. And I'm not sure if it has something to do with the publicity in the district. I have my youngest son as a junior in college, so I'm no longer in the district, and neither are the other organizers. So I'm not sure about how things get out. We tried, we emailed the principals and the PTA presidents and that kind of thing, but it's possible that the word is not getting out, also, which is a shame, but I don't know how to go about that. Yeah.
We will still hope that the whole concept of each one reach one would still resonate. If we as parents, we out of our awareness, we can do the right thing. For example, my son doesn't go to a party and I'm not sure which adult is going to be there in terms of supervising. And these are little things that we can do. As you say, I will pull up to the door and I'll find out who's present here as adult to supervise my kid and the others who are here. And when you can talk to a neighbor, a parent, and we can spread information and awareness, and hopefully that there will be a ripple effect for our community, and that will help. Peer mentorship is a powerful thing. So we do have, for example, a group of kids at the high school who have a passion for spreading information awareness. A lot of it they're doing through social media. We have Students Against Destructive Decision, which is a growing group here in the high school. And they focus a lot on teen safe driving campaigns, but they cover all the different things that kids do which are destructive. And drug and alcohol is a part of that process too. You could see some of them in action coming up in, I think it's May 17th, when we have our picnic in the park in Midland Avenue. It has become an annual event where they meet, they share, they have fun, playing music, have snacks, refreshment. This is an event that is put on in collaboration with Montclair Police Department, the Fire Department, the DCH Acura in Verona, and the Students Against Destructive Decision coming together, bringing awareness. So that's a big thing, and that's May 17th. It also includes an extrication exercise where they demonstrate the emergency response in the town. That's just one way in terms of how we can spread awareness. So let's not be disheartened and think that nothing is happening. One person can make the difference in bringing awareness.
Narcan is a drug they use to bring people back when they overdose. So I also want to address what you said. I just want to let you know, the majority of the schools, when the kids come in, we're just meeting them. But I just want you to know that the teachers, the administration, security guards, especially at the high school, because I'm here, they're paying attention to your kids. So even though we just meet them, we watch them, we see how they're acting, we see what they're interacting with, we see the changes, and most times you'll see they'll contact you when something's wrong, and so we're paying attention. One way that you can make a difference, like I said, is really just talking to your kids, letting them know that the decisions they're making are going to affect their future. One thing that I think somebody addressed it a little bit is you have to realize that when the kids do stuff now, they don't do it just for themselves. They do it for everyone to see. So a lot of this stuff is posted on social media. Pay attention to your child's social media accounts. All of them. Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. And there's even more that I probably don't even know about. But you have to pay attention to that. And if you watch it, you'll see some activities. And if you don't approve of those activities, you need to address it with them. And also understand that with that, those activities that they do on social media, it could affect them in the future. It could affect them getting into this college. It could affect them getting a job. It could affect all that. And also, if they get arrested doing these activities, because you're also making it public, when you get arrested, it's going to affect your financial aid. Trying to go to college, it's going to affect you getting scholarships. I just want you to, speak to them. Like I said, pay attention. You are the best detective. We're all here working together. Pay attention to your kids, talk to your kids, and try and be in tune with what's going on in their life, and if you find anything is wrong, just keep talking to them.
Let's go back to Narcan. What it does with heroin and cocaine floods the synapse with dopamine, and what Narcan does is it blocks the next nerve from uptaking dopamine. So it acts as dopamine and goes into the neurotransmitter, and it blocks any more dopamine from getting into the nervous system. Therefore, the addict wakes up. And they're thinking about going over the counter with it. It works that well about providing Narcan for drug users. as a basketball coach, and I was very aware of what my players were doing after winning games. And part of a coach's responsibility is to be observant of that. And they know, because the next day at practice, kids tend not to perform very well if they were out drinking. So I think I would go to the coach and say, there might be this culture in your team that you have to be observant of. And coaches are usually very good in this district, and they will watch that carefully. Because you're right, that is a problem. There is some sports that have the culture of partying after a victory. And that can draw all the kids into that, because everybody wants to be accepted. They're part of the team. It can be very dangerous and well noted.
Those are my
Well, I
questions.
just want to let you know, like I said, security and everyone in the school, we pay attention to a lot of things that happen. So, although the students are doing it, you may think it's happening at the school. It's not happening at the school. It's happening outside the school. The kids have cars and they have money. They can go get what they need, just like they'll go to the liquor store and get it. They can go, I mean, truthfully, social media has connected so many people in so many different ways. You can make a phone call. You don't have to make a phone call anymore. You can go to an app, contact somebody, and they will deliver or meet up with you for whatever you want. So it's not like it's not something crazy that you're thinking like all this is happening here in the schools. So I'll also say, when you address the parents, the partying, when you allow your kids to go to a party, and like Mr. Witt was saying, and the woman in the front here, you should go and ring the doorbell and see who's in charge. You should see who's at the party. You should see which parents are paying attention. If there are any parents there. Over the past week, we know there were a few parties, there were no parents present, and kids had full access to the house. And I mean, I'm sure you saw the movie Project X. When parents go away, sometimes they leave their teenage kids home. So there's nobody in charge. So you have to kind of pay attention to what your kids are doing. You have to drop them off. You have to watch them a little bit also. If you see something like this happening in your neighborhood, I mean, then you call the police. Some people don't want to get involved. I don't want to do anything. I don't even see it. But we can't be on every block every minute. So with your help, if you call in, we will show up and we will address the issue there. So it takes participation on every end for us to solve these issues.
And the police department does they will fine parents who will permit alcohol use in their home. They will fine them. They did that, 5 years ago or so? More than that? Yeah, and quite frankly, God forbid something happens to one of those kids. Those parents will be held responsible.
That's another email.
And I just want to say this also. When you speak to your children or you let them go to these parties, realize that drinking is probably the first bad decision. Now, if your daughter or son is sexually assaulted, like a lot of those crimes occur when alcohol is involved, bad decisions. Then when they drive away from the party and have an accident, that's all bad decisions. So we have to speak to them about making better decisions from the beginning. And also, just like I said, just be aware. If you know your child was drinking, or if you know they may drink, don't give them your car, Uber, whatever you have to do to just keep them safe.
There's a wonderful documentary on Netflix called Audrey and Daisy, about a girl who was an 8th grader, went to a high school party, got drunk, and was raped. It's a wonderful documentary. Watch it with your children.
I just wanted to address the conversation with your children when you're talking about them. I think it's important definitely let them know your perspective and what you expect, but to kind of address scenarios before it happens. Say to them, I want you to socialize, but I'm not okay with you drinking, using drugs. What would you do if you went to a party with a group of people and you were leaving and the driver was intoxicated? See what they say. Use that as a conversation and go over specific scenarios so they're armed with your expectation, what you've already agreed upon, and what you expect them to do from there. I saw this thing on Facebook, and I honestly can't remember where or who it came from or anything like that, and I usually don't reference Facebook because I'm not a big fan of social media, but it was a story about a parent who had their, and some of you might have seen this, had their child text them a symbol, or, I thought that was a great idea, very smart idea. They already had strategies in place. So if the child got into an uncomfortable situation, they could just text their parent, the parent would call them and arrange to pick them up. And go from there. So that's certainly not something you have to do, that's just something that I had heard of that sounded, pretty smart to me. But definitely have the specific conversations with the scenarios before something happens and see what they say.
I just want to add one thing too, as a teacher and as a parent of high schoolers. It's the responsibility is on us too to host those parties. So if you want to show your kids how to socialize, then we have to be the ones who host those parties and invite, allow your kids. I know it's crazy with teenagers and coming in and out of the house and everything, but if you want to see who your kids are hanging out with, say, hey, you can bring them to our house and see what's going on, or let's have a party and tell me what you want and what you want to do and that type of thing, to show them that you can have good parties and have fun without the drugs and alcohol.
Just about at every sporting event, there are administrators there. Have them reported to the administrator or a teacher that's on site. And if they're too intoxicated, then they'll be taken to the hospital and, we'll be contacted either way. But at least get them treatment, because sometimes they are definitely overly intoxicated. But just, if they want to report it, just report it to the administrator if they're not comfortable. The security guards are there from the high school, and also the police are there. So whoever they're more comfortable reporting it to, that's who they should report it to.
So there would be a school administrator at I'm thinking on hockey because it's the most recent example. But
Right. There's school administrators at the hockey game. There's also teachers and high school security and the Montclair Police Department.
My question was kind of along the same lines. I'm just wondering what proactively is being done. Okay, so I've heard the hockey games, people are drinking. So if we know this is going on, what are the police doing proactively to make, not just drunk, but any use of alcohol?
We can't really control the kids when they go home. They're not drinking here.
No, at the games.
When they come back already drunk, they've already, it's just kicking in at the game, but they've been drinking before they arrive there.
All right.
Well, we do try to check them. We have security check them. We can't do it because we need different type of level of probable cause. So we do have security, and they're very highly trained. So if they smell them, they'll pass them on to us, and then we'll handle it.
Okay.
We try not to let them come into the games because they're assigned a detective in the town. And we kind of monitor that because it does happen, not just at the hockey games, but it is very prevalent at the hockey games. I don't know what it is, but so it is, and it's a shame. But one of the things that I just wanted to bring up briefly as well is that we have, a couple of years ago, there was a law that was passed, and what it does, it helps juveniles report juveniles that are intoxicated because they become afraid because they're intoxicated themselves. So we've had so many cases where there's been cases of alcohol poisoning or cases where kids have died. Or they'll drop a kid, they'll do a roll-by, at a hospital and roll them out the car and keep moving. So we encourage the kids, and we do teach in the driver's ed classes, we teach about drugs and alcohol and driving in every single driver's ed class. So they do get that there. I don't know about the rest of the health. If they invite us into the classrooms, we do educate them about drugs and alcohol and the consequences as well. But that law, it protects. We're not going to come lock you up. We just want to make sure everybody's safe. Now, you're just not going home. It's not going to be that easy because I'm calling your mother and I'm calling your father and you have to come get them. You have to answer to them. And then if they're in sports, we're calling the assistant principals of athletics and we're letting them know because they were intoxicated in season and we'll let the school handle it. We work closely with the prosecutor's office as far as consequences, and most times we'll try to do alternative instead of the charging because we see it's a health issue. It may be, you know, it could be mental health, it could be post-traumatic stress, it could be a lot of different things. Kids are not just going to drink, sometimes just to get, but if they constantly, we notice it, we try to do more help than the charging. And the prosecutor has agreed that we can do station house adjustments, and that's where we get to, you know, play around a little bit with having them do, you know, community service, having them see their SAC every week. We work very closely with the SACs, and they know. We give them a call. Parents, we have to report. If your kid gets locked up on a Friday night, Saturday night, or Sunday night, we are reporting it to the school automatically. That is what we do.
Did you say there's a phone number they can call? The kids can call?
911.
If they know somebody? Oh,
911. They call 911 and we'll come, and we don't care that they're all drunk. Not that we're going to lock everybody up, but guess what? You're not leaving. But thank you for saving this kid,
okay,
and we'll deal with you guys in a different way.
Okay.
But it won't be, okay, we're charging everybody because you called,
Right.
because we want to encourage them, because we don't want kids to die.
Yeah.
So,
I will just say that we are seeing it on the juvenile level. Just like in the adults, it's probably going to become a growing problem if we don't address it.
We have to be very cautious with our athletes. Doctors prescribe oxycodone. Oxycodone is made from the opium poppy plant, the same thing heroin's made out of. And once the doctor stops the prescriptions, because now they're limited on what they prescribe. If that child, that young folk, that young person is addicted, then they go to Patterson and they get heroin. And the heroin can become, it's cheaper, but obviously much more dangerous. That's typically the way it starts. It starts with opiate, it starts with Oxycontin use, and then grows to heroin.
I'm going to say this. The police, we go everywhere, but like I said, we can't just sit there all day and all night. So, you know, the kids are sneaky, just like they'll get away with some stuff with you, that, like under your parents' nose, they'll get away with some of the stuff under the police nose also. But we do go just about everywhere. We are at Watchung Plaza, we are at the Quick Check, we are there. And I even go there sometimes during lunch breaks just to watch, so we're there.
yeah, you can't believe all the rumors. They're not smoking at the Quick Check. Let me tell you, Quick Check
Or
is so
maybe
serious.
they're buying stuff? I don't know.
No, they're
What
not
happens
buying.
with
Let me
the
tell you about
bottle?
Quick Check. They do not play this security.
No?
We can too, trust me. They call if there's too many kids in the store.
Oh,
So you have to then you have to also weigh, like watch on Classic, yes, because it's dark, you know, they have gazebo, they may have different, you know, so you may have different factors. But so you can't believe everything you hear, because I know some people say, oh, it's like 100 kids smoking. No, it's just one. So we have to be careful. I mean, and sometimes you can see for yourself, you know, so let me go check, you know, let me do a drive-by and see, because you might see something that we don't see.
Kim is right, and kids are very secretive about it. They know it's illegal, so they're going to go in the tunnels underneath the tracks. They're going to go in our alleys where cars can't go. They're going to go on the railroad tracks. They're going to go where they know we're not going to find them. They're not stupid. They're very secretive about this. They're not going to smoke weed at your Quick Check. They know that that's a disaster. And there's places, think about Hicks Alley. You know the Hicks Alley? It's a walking from block to block. It's very poorly lit, and kids can be in the middle of that. It's between, help me, Christopher and Grove. And you can't drive on it, it's a walking. There's a couple of really secretive places, and they're gonna be sneaky. They're not gonna do this where the police can see them. Even the police presence at Watchung Plaza is not gonna stop them. They'll find it somewhere else to go.
Or they might be doing it at home, because that happens too. At home, in the backyard, anywhere, like, you'd be so surprised where they do it. So it's really under your nose, you know, that's why it's so important to be aware of it. But also with the vape pens, it's oil. It might not even smell like pot. Most people say like, oh, you can smell it on them, you can see it through their eyes. Kids are smart, they put Visine in their eyes, they're smoking the vape pens, you won't even know. So that's why it's so important just to watch them daily.
It's inside police headquarters. It's in the main lobby. It looks like a big mailbox, and you just drop it off in here. It is a mailbox. Okay.
Very important. Get the opiates, get the Xanax, get the Ambien, get it out of your cabinet if you're not using it. Very important.
And it's open 24 hours.
Yes, the police department is open 24 hours. We don't close.
Just like the quick check.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, then thank you everyone for coming and really spread the word to your friends, you know, tell them about the link and, you know, look for these kind of things in the future and, you know, get your friends out there. Yeah, thank you to the town.